For shy, awkward, school-obsessed girls like me, Rory Gilmore was an icon. She embodied the exact kind of student and person I thought I should be. Until she fell apart. If you haven't seen the show Gilmore Girls before, here's a quick overview. The show follows mother Lorelai Gilmore and her daughter Rory as they navigate through life together and eventually reconnect with Lorelai's parents, Richard Gilmore and the Queen Gilmore, Emily. Lorelai is a spunky, eccentric hotel manager who had Rory at 16. At the beginning of the show, Rory is a timid girl who always has her nose in a book and has dreams of attending Harvard. The main focus of the show is the relationship between the three Gilmore girls, but each character also has their own individual stories and struggles, which brings along a lot of the supporting characters of the show. The show aired in 2000, and I wasn't born until 2002, so I was really late to the game and didn't watch Gilmore Girls until the summer before my freshman year of high school, which was in 2016. I immediately connected with Rory's character. Throughout my childhood, I'd always been like her, a little shy and awkward around unfamiliar faces, loved reading, and most importantly, had an extreme drive for success. When I began the show, I was ecstatic that I had found a character that represented the same devotion I had to my schoolwork and future. However, my happiness didn't last for long as I started to realize that Rory Gilmore was turning out to be a horrible person. Throughout the series, Rory begins to make some really big mistakes. Early on, her failed high school relationships were easy to dismiss because she was so young, and I mean, what do you really know at 16? However, around season 5, I began to realize that Rory was turning into a monster. Does that mean? I don't know. She lacked motivation to finish university at Yale simply because she couldn't take any form of criticism. She was extremely selfish and refused to recognize her privilege, and she was really disrespectful and cold to those who cared about her. When I finally finished the series, I was devastated. A character that I felt I related to so much had been let down by the writers and turned into this selfish girl. Fairly soon after I finished the series, the Netflix revival of this show was released. I was hopeful that Rory would have some kind of redemption arc and would turn out to be a great journalist like she'd always planned. Instead, Rory was out of work, was cheating on her boyfriend with an engaged Logan Huntsberger, and she was staying at her mom's house and wasn't even appreciative that Lorelai was letting her do that. Obviously, I will be forever upset that the writers chose to do this with Rory's character, because I just don't like the way her story ended. What is more troubling to me, though, is the kind of message that I took away from Rory's character arc. Rory spent her childhood preparing for university to the point where she lacked much of a social life. She was constantly studying and was obsessed with getting the most perfect grades and feedback. And for the most part, she did get what she wanted. Rory's first few years at Yale were successful, but when she finally broke, she just stopped. Her motivation to do anything was gone. It was like she was allowing herself to be completely burnt out. And as shown in the revival, she was never able to bounce back. As a viewer and person that really resonated with Rory, this sort of gave me the message that working super hard during your early, teenage and childhood years equals burnout during your adult life. In Rory's case, it led to her rebellious phase too. She'd been so guarded underneath her piles of books during high school that she barely had any social experiences. So when she was confronted by those opportunities in college, she sometimes let loose and took it to the extreme and ended up in serious trouble, like the time she was arrested after she got her first big piece of criticism from a guy who already wasn't that nice, but I won't get into it right now. What upsets me is that I don't know if this was a goal of the writers. It may have never crossed their mind that viewers like Rory herself were going to take this message from the way her character ended up. It's years after the revival has been released, and I still wonder if I'm going to end up following the same path as Rory. I still sacrifice social occasions to enjoy my alone time and to focus on schoolwork. Does this mean I might end up burnt out like Rory? I don't plan on that happening, but it's frightening to see how easily she was swept up in the craziness of life and got lost in it all. Okay, so why did Rory turn out to be such a bad person? Let's look at some possible reasons. Of course, as I've sort of mentioned, it could serve as some sort of message that if you, spend all your time, blah, blah, blah. I'm not even going to go into it because I don't really think that was a message that the writers were trying to send. Oh my gosh. I don't want to accept that this was a possibility, but I also just don't think that Gilmore Girls was really a show that was supposed to make people think. So I'm going to rule that one out. The more plausible reason lies in the name. Rory is a Gilmore. The Gilmore family was all about class, rank, and luxury. And Rory was introduced to this lifestyle much later in her life than her mother Lorelai, who fled it at the same exact age, 16, when Rory was introduced. Lorelai, knowing the negativity that surrounded the Gilmore family and that entire lifestyle, and the importance they put on money and reputation, she did everything in her power to teach Rory that those sort of people were often evil and ingenuine and just didn't care for one another. Unfortunately, financial circumstances led to Rory having to become a part of that lifestyle. And honestly, Rory enjoyed it. Although she tried to maintain the idea during her early adult years that she came from nothing, Rory accepted a lot of the stuff she was given. She accepted her privilege and just refused to be self-aware, honestly. The Gilmore side caught up to her during her college years, and it really showed in the later seasons of the show and in the revival. Rory's college years were the point of time in her life where she sacrificed a lot of what she loved, like reading and writing, in order to make room for the things that her grandparents, school, and boyfriend Logan encouraged. And what I mean by that is I think she pushed a lot of the Lorelai out of her and brought in a lot of the Emily, and that's not necessarily bad because Emily was a queen, but it just changed Rory a lot in a not good way. And honestly, I think this is the big reason why Rory turned out so blech. I know that there was drama about writers in the later seasons, and that may have contributed a little bit to why her character went on such a bad path, but Rory was always just kind of a selfish girl, and when she suddenly had this other layer of privilege and protection from her family name, she was kind of a lost cause because no one really said no to her, and when they did, she just kind of pouted and gave up so that they didn't have the opportunity to say no anymore. I love Rory, but we all have to admit that she was always a little bit selfish. She messed around with boys' feelings in high school, messed with boys' feelings in college. She threw fits when she didn't get what she wanted, and she just didn't like hearing no. And I guess it was a good thing that her grandparents liked to spoil her. Rory Gilmore kind of turned out to be a sucky person, and I'm still mad about it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys are mad about how Rory Gilmore turned out, let me know down in the comments below. If you have any other thoughts, please share them with me. If you'd like to see other video essays like this, let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.